Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another tactics episode with Dharnish here. It's been too long, 3 months since the last one. It's been a little tough for us to get the time together to do this, but we wanted to catch things up as we head into the end of the season. Obviously, I think at this point we can make some very solid assumptions about the way that we've played this year. I think we want to talk about if things have changed at all, for if anything has changed through the course of the season. Catch up on some recent performances, and then talk as well about what the future might hold and what a change in style might look like, what possession football means, and a whole host of other things. So, yeah, first of all, how are you?
Good, thank you. We always seem to do this when I'm in Spain. I'm in Madrid right now, but I'm good, thank you. Yeah, getting towards the end of the season now, and I actually can't wait to till the season finishes because it feels like I'm just watching the same game week in week out. I'm watching the same things week in week out. But I hope you're good as well.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I feel the same. It's funny because on a podcast with Phil every Monday, I keep saying that to him every single week. Is the
The
same
same
as
thing.
I'm saying I'm kind of hoping we could get here and talk about that it's different, but whether we win, lose or draw, every game feels the same.
It does.
Everything feels the
It
same.
does.
It feels like, maybe that's the first time we've had consistency in a long time. It's just not the consistency that we're
The
looking
one.
for. It's almost consistent inconsistency, where we're just looking at the same kind of collapses, the same problems that are not being solved, the same issues. And yeah, so I guess since the last time we've had a lot of games. Obviously, we've had bad losses. We've had good wins. We had cup games like Liverpool. We had Coventry. We've had yesterday's at Sheffield United. And I guess the first thing I want to talk about is the issues that we had seen prior in the season, where we talked about in previous episodes, where there was a bit of like a half-hearted press,
Hmm.
gaps in the midfield, the distances between the forwards and the back line. Um, has any of that changed in the last 3 months, really?
No, no, it has not. I'm very glad you asked that. So yeah, since the last time we spoke, I'm just having a quick glance at all the fixtures. We had a bunch of wins in January. So we had the Wolves win, there was the West Ham win, there was the Villa win, and then there was the Luton win. Um, and then since February, March, and then I think since the international break, they've dropped. They've had the draws against Bournemouth and against, I forget now, Liverpool, and then the horrible loss against Chelsea. So no, nothing, no, absolutely nothing has changed really. The wins in January were as a result of, okay, and I don't know how many times I've said this now. There were the wins in January were what he is trying to do, and the wins that he's trying to get in that manner of, okay, it's we have fast players in transition. We have Rashford, we have Garnacho, we have Fernandez, and Hoyland at the time was very much in form. Those wins were, if you punch us twice, we're going to get back up and hit you three times.
Mm, yep.
There were still very chaotic games with I think we dropped 3 goals to Villa. Sorry, dropped 3 goals to Wolves. The
Yes.
the Villa game was very, very intense. It was very high octane. They had to defend the box like madmen. And then the Luton game was very similar as well, where it was just, it feels like up until full time, United play games at full pelt. It's mainly because they have to. And I think it's important to realize it's by design at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely by design. Like you said earlier, we just watch the same game every week, and it tends to have different results, or the scorers are different. But this is absolutely by design, which is chaos ball, play transitions, defend the box well, concede lots of shots if we have to. But the problem with doing that is you are only going to win by a nose hair. And when you don't win by a nose hair and you don't win, then there's going to be questions that are asked. So after those wins in January, we lost to Fulham. The loss to City happened as well. And then recently we've had this, since the international break, the team hasn't been able to hold the lead. The idea for going for chaos ball, for going for transitions, is, as I explained earlier, it's for the benefit of the attack. However, there's different ways of playing for transitions, of playing for counter-attacking football that would allow you to be more solid. This is not one of those ways. This is not one of those ways of, okay, the forward line presses, and if they don't win the ball, that's fine. Kobe Minu or Casemiro or whoever is in the middle will have 40 yards to Marshall, and as soon as they come close to the box, they can have as many shots as they want. And when that attack breaks down, we're going to go on the other. We're going to go towards the other end and attack. Case in point, that's why everybody was loving the Chelsea game, because the Chelsea game's like that. Both teams don't really know how to defend very well. Both teams have nice, lovely attackers who are going to benefit. But if you don't know how to be solid and you allow your opposition to have as many shots as they want, eventually they're going to score some. Ten Hag's, I think, again, this is another response in terms of, I think he sat down in January and he said, okay, look, I've still got my injuries, and I still want to throw in the forward line press. The biggest thing for me that has changed this season is, and I don't know why he's done it, because it's not been thought out very well. Remember how compact we were last season?
Yeah,
where it was very much, look, we're going to strangle teams in the middle of the pitch. There's a graphic that I have, it'll be on my Twitter, and I always post it, of the derby last season, and it was very much the wingers tucking in, Casemiro, Eriksen, and Rashford as the forward line, making sure that you clog the middle of the pitch. It was very much, look, go out wide if you want. I don't care. We'll deal with you out wide. Wan-Bissaka will deal with you out wide. But if you compact the middle, you stop teams playing in a very dangerous area of the pitch. This season, what he's done is say, the forward line forwards press, the fullbacks only press when you're at home and when we need to turn the game over and when the crowd is sort of on their backs. That's the only time when he presses with the fullbacks pushed up. But I'm not really sure what the forward line press does, because we had turnovers at the beginning of the season, but we're not even getting them now anymore. The space conceded in the middle of the pitch is a huge problem, and it's also a detriment to the players, because they're covering mad distances to run. They're covering 30, 40 kilometers to run, and it's not exactly a type of football that you want to play when you are already dealing with an injury crisis.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm remembering, against City last year, I think in the game you're talking about, I recall seeing an interesting tactic where, because City loved to do, of course, like the fullback with the winger, inverting through them, and then you pass through the lines, and then you cut it back. It's a bread and butter football in that respect. They do it all the time. And I remember very specifically, it was like they let their fullbacks run with the ball as much as they wanted. They didn't care about it, but they would cover the middle and they'd cover that winger's run, and they would mark them to the death. So the fullbacks could keep running up the field, and then they would never have that pass through the lines available, because we were covering that and making the middle really dense. So the inverted runs didn't work. The things like that didn't work. And then this season, and if we watch even again yesterday, cutbacks. It keeps happening. The pass right through the middle. So even there's the running through the space aspect of it through the midfield, but then also the cutbacks are there because there's no one, those midfielders are not deep tracking runs. There's nobody to do it. So, it makes sense. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know either. We've talked about it before, but I think we felt like there were some really good games last year. There were some really good performances where you would say, is that a model for things forward? You think about the City game. You think about Barcelona. There's a game against Tottenham, Newcastle. Now, ironically, a lot of these included Fred, and again, amusingly,
we're big Fred fans over here.
Amusingly,
big Fred fans.
If you wanted the spaces you have now, Fred would make cover for a lot of the deficiencies that you're seeing just because of his intense work rate. So it's kind of odd, because I feel like that was his biggest strength, and you take him out, but then you make bigger spaces. and it's almost like an opposite logic of what you probably should have done in that respect. So, yeah, so that's obviously an issue. That this and I think the thing that you said that speaks to it the most, where it's a little confusing for a lot of us, but where I think it's really hard to let Ten Hag off the hook for this, is that it is the way he wants to play. And
At the
it
moment,
was
yes.
interesting.
At the
Yeah,
moment,
and it
yes.
was interesting. There
The way
was
he
an
wants to
interview
play.
that came out that kind of came back up from his time at Ajax in his first season, where Ruud Gullit was saying, "You leave these huge gaps in the midfield. You can't do it. You can't do it." And Ten Hag was saying it is part of the plan, and
Yeah.
it's covered by doing other things well, retaining possession, all of that. And you could read into it a few different ways, but it feels like this is how he wants to play, and he thinks that better players would mean maybe you'd have the ball more, or you'd win it higher, or I don't know
I
what
think
the better players would fix. That's my question. I'm not quite
no, me
certain of
neither.
that.
Me neither. Because it's too much of an unsustainable model to, number one, to control games, number two, to dictate games. And it's also why they keep losing leads so often. I feel like Man United are only going to win games when the clock runs out, if that makes sense. I feel
Right.
like which is insane for me to say, because last season I think they had most of their wins were 1-goal leads. The amount of times where it got to, I think there was 20 minutes left or 15 minutes left, he would throw a defender on and go, okay, fine, we're just going to defend this.
Yep.
This season it's not occurred as well, because it doesn't. What you do when you encourage a tennis match of a game is you go, well, I think I'm better than you when I score on attacks, but I'm going to let you have as many attacks as you want.
Yeah, like Chelsea.
Yeah, or Chelsea, Liverpool. All those
Mm-hmm.
wins in January were literally by an inch. Like
Mm.
they only won by an inch
Yeah.
against Luton, against Villa, against Wolves. They needed a last minute goal against Mainu. And the model came apart against Fulham, because again, I think this style of football is perhaps an answer from Ten Hag, because they look completely bereft of ideas when playing a team in the bottom half, which is strange. Again, I keep saying it. It's strange because last season that's what they were very good at. It
Yeah.
was it was 3-1-6, and against the bottom half, United home and away knew how to fashion attacks. So we're talking about possession based. There's reports that Ten Hag wants to play possession, or he's been ordered to play more possession based. That's what we saw last season a lot of.
Yeah.
This season we haven't seen that. Perhaps maybe because he doesn't have inverted fullbacks at fullbacks. Lindelof had to play fullbacks multiple times this season. Amrabat had to play a fullback multiple times this season. So it is a response, I believe, to the fact that this team has completely forgot how to fashion attacks and score goals when they have more of the ball, which is why we see them go long often. But it doesn't. Again, even that doesn't feel formulated. It just feels like they go long because they don't know what to do when the central midfielders are marked in the middle of the park. It's a very confusing time to be a Man United fan, because you have a manager who is basically managing for his job, I think.
Right.
Even if he wasn't managing for his job, there's new ownership coming in, and every little thing he's doing, there's a magnifying glass attached to it, because that's just how it is. And you would think that, what are we, game week, I don't know how many games left, game week 34?
33, 34 this weekend.
Game week 33, 34. You would think that by now he would have figured out a more sustainable model, or a more sustainable answer to the problems of injuries. We don't know how to build up against teams in the bottom half anymore. But this is what we've been seeing for the past 10 or 12 weeks. I think it was interesting listening to his interviews just before the winter. So this was just before the Chaos Ball. The Chaos Ball is like at the turn of this year, right? Which is like,
Right.
at least we got a few fun wins, because we've got Garnacho, we've got Højlund, we've got Fernandez. A few of those fun wins came in January. In the winter, just before the winter, I remember specifically watching games back going, I have no clue what we're doing. That was the hoofball era.
Yes.
Ten Hag called it pragmatic, but it was just hoofball, really. It was relying on individuals to be very good. It was relying on a Dallo screamer, a Fernandez screamer, a Garnacho overhead kick. And ultimately, I think United have been even worse than what the table is suggesting this season. I think the expected points and expected goal difference, there was a chart going around showing that they should be much lower than what they are. Going forward,
16th, I think.
16th?
Yes, literally 16th. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In the expected, in that there's like an expected
Yeah,
points
there's
based
like
on
a
they're
expected.
16th
So
in
that shows that they
expected.
should be even worse than what they are. It's just going forward. I don't think that he cannot think that this is number one sustainable, number two something to build on. And this model worked in January because we all shut our mouths mainly because why? We won. United won.
Mm-hmm.
When United when United win games, that's the bare minimum. Like that's what they've done,
Yeah.
and nobody will, and the chatter will quieten down a bit. When you don't win games and you're winning games in a manner where people are going, not really sure that's right, but they are winning, then you're going to need to answer these questions. And it doesn't help either that he's very stubborn in the press conferences and he keeps saying the same things. It would help a little bit if he could explain the mindset behind it. I don't mind him defending his style or defending the club because I think he has a right to do that. But it would help a little bit if he explained a little bit more in terms of his approach. What do you feel? I mean, and I don't know if you're hearing anything, but what do you feel is going to happen going forward, and what do you think needs to happen?
Well, just making sure I choose all my words semi-carefully. I mean, there's obviously things I've said for a long time in terms of Ten Hag being, to some degree interviewing for his job over the course of this period of time. And I think that the problem that he faces is that, if he had managed to get good results, it would have been hard to let him go at the end of the season, even if it wasn't pretty. If you're getting Champions League and things like that. But that's kind of off the table, right? I think it's practically impossible to get Champions League at this point in time.
Yeah.
Especially with fifth not really being unlikely to get it now with the English clubs, bowing out of the Champions League and all that, which is fine with me. But, and so I'm not sure. It's confusing, right? Because I don't know if he thinks his job is so secure that he hasn't had to adjust.
Yeah.
Because it's a little odd to me. Like I can't quite get through his mindset. If he is here for the long haul and he knows it for sure, then stick with something and just keep hammering it home and try to get there eventually, which is probably what should have happened in the first season, right?
Yeah.
Stick with where you want to go. Don't bail out for quick results. Stick with where you want to go and keep building on that. And the struggle has been that now we're in the second season, and it was almost like in the second season we did first season things by trying to now implement a new system in the second season when it should have been, if we were in 6th, 7th, 8th in Ten Hag's first season, you wouldn't get this level of criticism.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get this level of doubt from most people. You might still from media and things, but I think as fans, most of us would have sat there and said, it's one season. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's one season.
Yeah.
By the end of the season, we'd like to see progress, of course, and maybe we would have. And maybe the first 6 months would have been really bad. And then it would have continued. It would started to improve by the end of the season. And then the second season, we would have actually been building on that. But it feels like we went one way and then tore it down and then have started over.
Forward 4 steps back.
Yeah. And usually we do that manager to manager. We don't usually do that in between years in the same manager. I mean, Jose did what he did and he kept doing it. And then eventually just stopped working. And that's what happens with Jose Mourinho, I thought Oli progressed really well.
I agree.
Until he didn't in the third season.
I feel like he needed some time after Solskjaer to appreciate the job that he actually did.
Agreed,
I would
because
much rather be in a position where it's I don't know how to break down low blocks, which was his
yes,
biggest
which is what
bugaboo,
we were. Yeah, yeah,
rather than what the position is now, where almost everything is questionable, almost everything, which is very odd and very unfortunate because this some of the work that Ten Hag did last season was terrific, like
yeah,
terrific. It was there was some games where it was literally, this is going wrong. I'm going to change it here and see what works. And normally it did work. Some of the things he did was very smart. That's the other thing I can't get past this season is like we were talking about earlier. We've seen the same game every week, and this
yeah,
was a guy who constantly changed things last season. Constantly,
yeah.
it was very much. It was I'm gonna block the middle and go for transitions against big teams, and we're gonna beat the lower league teams by playing 3-1-6 and using inverted fullbacks and using space on the wings.
Yes, yeah,
This season, all it's been is literally we've had chaos ball from January till now, and then before chaos ball to attain for the injuries, it's been pragmatism, aka hoofball, and that's all I've watched this season. That's all I've watched.
yeah.
I get I think the pressing has been the biggest difference. Um, he played it for 3 or 4 games and was like, "Oh, there's too much space in the middle. Don't press anymore." As in press less for the forward line, but the midfielders and the defense still don't push up and they don't press either. But it doesn't. It just feels like a bit of a mess right now, and I'm not sure what the way out is with Ten Hag um, as manager in, because you can't constantly say the same things when you're not changing anything yourself.
Right. Well, and that's why I'm confused. Like it's really hard, and I think it's confusing because the team is confusing. It's
Yeah,
confusing because the tactics are confusing. It's confusing because like I really understood what happened last year, the adjustments that were made and what we built on. But then I thought, all right, this year I don't really get it.
yeah.
I don't really get it because we're not building anything. I don't see foundations, right? And I think that's the biggest problem Ten Hag will have in terms of claiming a future under new management and for next season is, can you point to a foundation that has been laid this year? Because there's an argument to be made for that it's going to take a long time. I think it will be. I think it may even be a two-step process, a two-manager process to get us where we need to be. Where again, talking about Ollie, I thought Ollie laid down a lot of foundations, but didn't have
There
maybe
was
the
another that
experience to
yeah,
go the next step,
up
to
to the
raise
next
the
level.
ceiling.
Absolutely.
And he tried and it fell apart. They tried in that third season, he tried and it kind of didn't work. That next step brought about amusingly almost similar issues to what we're seeing now. Huge gaps in the midfield, disjointed pressing, lots of stuff like that. So he tried, but where Ten Hag will have an argument is to say, look, I'm laying foundations that need to be laid, and we're going to struggle while we're laying them, and then we want to build on top of that.
Yeah.
The problem is, can you see any foundations? I don't see
I don't see any. I don't see
foundations
any.
because there's no pressing foundation. There's
Yes.
no, box defending is something we've been doing for 10 years. It's not
Yeah.
new. We did it under Jose. We did it under Ollie. We've been doing good box defending for a long time.
I mean,
We're
they
pretty
do it
good at it.
remarkably well. It's
Yeah,
insane how remarkably well they've actually
that's what
done.
they're used to.
Box defending this season. It's insane
Yeah.
how good the box defending is. It just there's the other thing is as well. This is a little bit positive, but I think it's a season where the players haven't stopped either. The players have not
Yes,
stopped. They've stuck to the plan regardless of how haphazard it's been.
I
Um,
agree.
a lot of the young players are flourishing very well. This is Garnacho's breakout season. This is Kobe Maino's breakout season. Somebody replied, I did some work on Kobe Maino, and someone replied saying he's literally the only reason I'm watching right now. And I didn't even refute that. I didn't blame that. What I want to see happen going forward, I keep going back to Arsenal, not because I'll give him time. I keep going back to Arsenal because I don't remember how they played when Arteta got them 2 seasons in a row. But the media coverage was exactly the same. Everybody was like, "What are they doing with him? Maybe he needs to get out." But I perhaps need to go back and see how they played. But
Yeah.
in the summer, ripping it up again and getting a new manager and getting a new play style. It feels like United do this every 2-3 seasons. Um, if Ten Hag was to stay, though, this football can't be played. This football just cannot be played. But I feel like he knows that as well, and we're just waiting to get to the end of the season. But if that was the case, why on earth did you not waste half a season? But why on earth have you not changed anything? I don't know, since January or since before the winter. If you knew you were going to have injuries this whole time this season, and you knew for a fact that new management are coming in, why are you not trying different things? It really doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, well, that is the issue. That is the part that doesn't really make sense, and maybe he just doesn't know. I mean, look, English football is unique.
Yeah.
I'm not to say it's always the best. When you look at Champions League, obviously England don't have the most success in the Champions League. Spain and such do, and regularly have been more successful in head-to-head competition. But English football is unique in its own way. It is its own animal to deal with. And, like Liverpool are looking at here, Arne Slot obviously becoming kind of the favorite. They'll probably deal with a lot of the same issues. They may not even realize it, but they're going to deal with a lot of the same issues because people have already looked at it and said, there's some of the same problems that Ten Hag has had with the midfield, with the spaces, with all of that. You can see all of that under Arne Slot. Now, he's a totally different person to Erik Ten Hag, personality-wise and all of that, so maybe they think it'll be a lot different. Maybe it'll work out for him because they have a more settled team. I think the issue, one way or another, and moving into the future kind of discussion here is whether you go with Ten Hag or a new manager this summer, it's all being ripped up and started over anyway.
Yeah.
It is, right? Because there isn't we're almost there. There's no anybody who thinks that we're almost there. We've got this mostly being done is wrong.
Yeah.
We're not almost there. We are not almost there. We're not even close to being competing at a high level.
Basically, what we wanted to do last season. Well, I think everybody left last season thinking, good. That was good.
Yes.
I don't like some of the issues. I don't like some of the problems. There's things to build on, but we will address that next season. Instead, the issues haven't been dealt with from last season, and now he's got new ones on top.
Yes.
If Ten Hag had credit in the bank from last season, I think he's in overdraft now, and I don't think that I have seen anything where I go, okay, well that's one way to deal with some of the issues.
Yeah. Well, that's I think definitely the point is the problems haven't been solved. Like I said, in terms of if there was a foundation last season, it's already crumbled, this season. So one way or another, we're starting over. And so I think the decision to be made is for how we want to play moving forward to become a top level team. Is Erik Ten Hag the best guy for it or someone else the best guy for it? Yeah. And that's essentially the argument, the discussion, the review, all of that. They can have even sat there and said, we don't think Eric's the right guy. They also need, as a secondary part of that decision, as a separate decision, to say, if that's the case, and we think that, do we have a better person? Now, Jim Ratcliffe said, first thing in his interview when he got the club, that the goal would be about style, settling on a style. We all kind of have known this now for some time that this is the issue, and it was nice to see him say it about how they've chopped and changed, Moyes to LVG to Jose to Oli to Ten Hag. They're totally different. Every single one of them is totally different. So every 2 years we chop it up because we don't continue a thread through. You can change managers without undoing everything, but we don't continue a thread through the team, right? And so he said, we're going to decide on a style with the directors, with all of that, and then the manager has to play that. The manager has to play that. So he made it pretty clear. It's not how the manager wants to play dictates what we do. It's not what's in the squad, and I don't think you could take this squad and say it's totally fit for purpose for any specific kind of football at the moment. But it's from a top-down decision. And if you look at the hires, Omar Barada, COO of City group, right? You look at how Manchester City and Girona play. You look at
You already know.
Wilcox was the academy director for City, ingraining into the youth a certain way of playing that is the
Absolutely.
City way.
Absolutely.
And then you look at Dan Ashworth, what he brought in at Brighton under Potter and now De Zerbi.
Yeah.
And then you look at there's evidence like Ducker wrote an article that Xabi Alonso would be their top target if he would have been available, but he's not.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about the most possession-based examples that exist in European football, frankly.
Yes. Yeah.
When you're talking about those examples of these, De Zerbi is a possession, fanatic. Xabi is also, so is obviously City. They play different football, though, funnily enough.
Yeah.
Like, they all play different football, but it is a very specific way of playing, a very specific style of football. And at its core. And I think it's obviously viewed that is the best route to being consistent and good on an every week basis, where you know what you're going to get week in and week out.
Yeah. Well, we know what we're going to get now.
Well, yeah,
50 shots, space
exactly.
in midfield. But
well,
it's not.
You're gonna be good. You're gonna control games and put yourself in a place to win. And I think that, and some people think that means it's going to be like City every week, and which some can feel is very slow and boring at times. But that doesn't mean that either. You can combine certain principles. I've watched Leverkusen, and I would not call them boring in the slightest.
No.
Not at all.
But it's also, just to hop on your point there, Leverkusen had some changes this season as well due to injuries and the squad not being that good. Xabi Alonso made some interesting changes in January, but you talked about Potter and De Zerbi there. It's interesting to me that Potter left and Brighton actually got elevated. It's because there wasn't too much that De Zerbi had to rip up. It was more so, okay, I've got this as a good base, and now I can continue. I think also some of the stuff from last season was, when you're Man United coach, you need to win. Regardless of what anybody says or thinks, it's like Real Madrid. You need to win. It's an elite club that needs excellency, and it demands it basically. Real Madrid is a club that demands it, and if it doesn't get it, you're out regardless. There was rumors of Ancelotti leaving last season just because he didn't win La Liga. United gets the same coverage, but in a similar vein, it's not. Consistency in terms of greatness demanded is nowhere near the same. It's rather they choke on mediocrity more often than not.
Yeah, I agree. And so let's take this part of the discussion then in terms of the future.
Yeah.
If United were intending to go towards a more possession-based model, and Ten Hag said at the beginning of the season that he wanted to build the best transition team in the world, which doesn't totally, you can be in possession and good in transition. There are very much teams that are like that, but they certainly don't totally match. So either way, though, if moving forward, that would be the system. One, do we have players that could fit in that? There's a lot of talk about guys like, specifically two players in particular, Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford, that because they're big name players, I'm sure there's others. I think Alejandro Garnacho is really similar to Rashford in a lot of ways, so probably fits into this discussion as well. But not as big a name of player, and he's young, so maybe he's got more time to adjust. Can those two players fit into a possession style team? And if so, is there a good comparison out there for what type? Is there a team that, I guess I would say, that plays possession football that has attackers like Marcus Rashford, that has midfielders like Bruno Fernandes in their team?
Yeah.
And do you think that's possible?
I think it's highly possible that these two can play in a position-based team. Because look at the wins last. I'll say it again. Look at the wins last season. Look at the wins against Bournemouth. Your Nottingham Forests. Your trying to think of more here. Name another Premier League mid-table team. Sorry to anybody out there who's watching.
Yeah, we had like West Ham and well, they're better than mid-table this year, but we had a good win against West Ham this year. But
I'm trying to remember the Bournemouths.
yeah,
The
there was a
last year of last season,
yeah.
but basically United did keep the ball for the majority of the game, and they manipulated the opposition into moving their block around in order to score and create goals. So I think
Yeah.
there's definitely evidence that they can do that. And Fernandez was probably one of his best seasons last season. And
Yeah.
it was also Marcus Rashford. So I definitely think that they can thrive under that. It's just right now this isn't a team where
Leicester beat Leicester pretty handily.
Leicester as well. But at the moment, this team isn't in a place where it exuberates or elevates any of the players. So
Hmm.
I find these comparisons of saying, well, would this work in a possession-based model? Well, I mean, these two players were playing when Solskjaer was there. These two players were
Hmm.
playing last season. So there is evidence to suggest that it can be possible as well. It's just going forward, I'm not sure how comfortable. And I think this is like it's weird that Ten Hag has had the season that he has, and we're still questioning. Well, maybe will he go because of like convenience, basically, or because of well, I don't. They always rip it up. They always rip it up and get a new manager in, and then it does, and then it goes to plan kind of for 2 years, and then it doesn't go to plan for the third years. Do they want to do that again? He hasn't lost the dressing room. It feels like he hasn't lost the dressing room. I know there's incidents that have occurred because it's Man United. Incidents always occur, but it seems like he's largely kept the players on side. So those seem to be the reasons as to why you would keep Ten Hag. But within those reasons, it is not this season being good for a reason to keep him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to answer your question, I think those players could definitely thrive in a possession-based system. They've already proved that they have.
Yeah, it's real interesting because I always like to ask people who look at these kind of tactical things in a more depth because you get so many narratives that go out there about these types of players, and I think
I think we spend too much time on social media, me and you.
Yeah, probably, and it kind of frustrates me, and I spend a lot of time trying to I almost take sometimes a bit too much of a contrarian view on certain things because I hate sayings and phrases. Like I hate them in things because I just don't think that in football and in life you can like put things in neat little boxes like that with everything.
Yeah.
I've seen players thrive. I saw Leroy Sané in that City team, a player who pace, power, fast, technical too. I would say a comparison to, a left-footed player like Marcus, left-footed Rashford in there. I saw him do really well at City, at Bayern, and be successful. I've seen it a lot. Bruno Fernandes, you obviously look at Kevin De Bruyne, who's for sure better than Bruno. Kevin De Bruyne exists in a stratosphere that's almost unachievable for players, right? But in terms of stylistically, there's not that much difference between the two of them in many ways.
I also just feel as though they're being encouraged to play that way right now. So what we're seeing on the pitch is them being encouraged to play chaos ball.
Yeah.
I think telling Bruno Fernandes of all people saying, "Go on, throw as many Hollywood balls forward as you can."
Yes.
He's not going to. He doesn't.
Of course.
You don't need to tell him twice.
I think they both try to drag the team up, and when they're not good, it looks bad. They look terrible. Rashford's having a bad season. There's no doubt about it. He's trying to drag the team up and score goals and not doing well. And so it looks way worse because he's not a player who tends to like, and it's probably instruction too. People ask, why does he play every game? Well, obviously Ten Hag needs him to try to produce. Same with Bruno. And when it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, it looks poor.
When it doesn't work, they get this. Rashford in particular gets the stick.
Yeah. I always go back to a brief period because for some reason it always sticks out in my mind. And I think it's because since Sir Alex retired, I think it's the best United have played. And it was during the season that Cavani was there, during the lockdown season under Oli.
The final Solskjaer season.
Yeah, there were some really good games with
Some really
when
good football.
Cavani was playing at striker, where the football was actually fantastic on in a lot of levels. Rashford that season played almost primarily in a creator role rather than a
Left
scoring
wing.
role.
I think he was
Yeah, and
left
he
wing
was
in that role.
crosses, everything. You had the comeback against Southampton where it was crosses from Rashford to Cavani making runs. Bruno as
Comebacks against
well.
everybody. Yeah,
You had
that,
the
that was the
nine
that was the
zero
comeback.
game. Yeah, you had 9-0. They would dominate a lot of games against lower opposition. There was the unbeaten away record that season
Yeah,
as well, right? Um, and it showed me a different way that a lot of the players could play, you know, in a more settled team. Maybe the pressure with not having the fans there helped that, right?
yes, I
Where it
think
wasn't
so.
so pressing, like it wasn't like so much pressure. So they relaxed a little more and settled into it. And maybe it's a mental aspect, maybe it's all of that. So, I don't think it's a sure thing. Like if we move to a possession style, Bruno's gone. Now, will we be less reliant? Do we need to be less reliant to move forward on his heroic attributes? Probably.
Perhaps, but there's been games where he shows where he showed he
He
doesn't always
can.
need to play the hero ball.
Yeah.
I read an interview of his last season where he said Ten Hag has called me into his office before and said we need to fix this. And I think I remember the City game this season in particular away, where instead of we needed to keep the ball more, just to
Yeah.
have your foot on the ball because against City, you don't see the ball for like a long time. Um, and also, I'm less concerned about those players. I'm more concerned about players building out from the back because your sequences
Yeah.
with attacks they start from the back.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be more concerned in possession based being a possession based team and having Casemiro as your central midfielder or having a defender next to Martinez if he's hopefully fit that can also play out from the back. Um, because the point is you of building out from the back, you meant to get the ball smoothly from A to B into attack. And then the attacking players, they make their decisions and you make their runs and see if they can score. But the point is you get the ball from here to here smoothly. So I would be more worried about having the right players at the back that would build out and be able to do that. I don't envision Casemiro in that, by the way, at all. Perhaps it's a fitness thing. Somebody did say it's like you cannot be that depleted in one season. I know he's getting older and his legs may have. I hate this phrase, by the way. We were talking about phrases either. His legs have gone, but it's literally just one season. I think it is maybe fitness and maybe Ten Hag just rushing everybody back because he's desperate to win every game. I don't know if what you think about that.
Well, with Casemiro in particular, there were some concerns even in preseason that he wasn't up to the fitness standards even before
Okay.
having injuries.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't
that
want
makes
to put it
more
on
sense.
him that it's a discipline issue, but it kind of comes across that way. Like he
Wow,
just
really?
hadn't kept, and maybe that's age. Like I think it's not like it goes all at once and it's like it's suddenly gone, right? But of course, as someone gets older, the more mileage, maybe what you used to do to stay fit doesn't work anymore, right? Like
Mm.
when I'm 32, so similar age, right? When I was 24, what I could do to stay in shape was a lot easier than what I have to do at 32.
Yeah.
And even when I was 29, it was different. I mean, every year now, not to act old, right? But every year now, it gets harder. Like you have to do a little bit more. I'm if I haven't been at the gym or I haven't been running or haven't been doing anything in terms of particular workouts, and I go, running after my kid to play tag or something, I'm ruined. Like I can't just start from nothing anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
think for a lot of players who have, genetics obviously play into a factor of people becoming professional athletes where they're predisposed to being more athletic. There's no doubt about that with people that is a factor on top of hard work, right? There's always that. And I think that players probably, I'm not saying they're not hard workers. Some of them are very hard workers, but I think that in many cases, just as you get older, year by year, more mileage, you have to do more to stay fit. And so maybe if he was doing the same, suddenly it's not enough anymore and it can come as a
And
surprise.
you don't believe he's been doing different things. You think he's just been following the same regimen. And
yeah, and I'm not saying, and that's why I say I wouldn't call it like a discipline issue, because if he's like, this is what I do, this is my routine, this is my habit, and then suddenly it's not good enough anymore, that's when I think players, you get like, oh, the player's legs have gone.
yeah,
Some players adjust to it and some don't. And the ones that don't, kind of fade off into retirement teams and things like that. And some do and continue to play at a high level. Ronaldo being an obvious example of this. As he got into his 30s, you could tell he slowed down in some respects.
But
In
he
terms of
changed his game,
he changed his game to adjust for it. And Messi the same, had changed his game as he got older as well. Not intensely, because his was less intensive physically, than someone like, but it happens. You see it in all sports. No matter who you are, LeBron James, whatever, they change their game to adjust for that. Sometimes that's really hard to do for people. And I think that's what probably Casemiro's running into, is it's hard to change it. And what he's being asked to do
is heavy.
For sure. I don't even know if he could have done it at 25, but certainly at his age now, it's a lot harder. It would be really difficult.
It did feel like he did that well last season. So
yeah. But maybe you just burnt out. I mean, you can. I mean, you look at Liverpool's team under Klopp, they burn out. There's no doubt about it. It's demanding to do things. They're burnt out right now, and they're failing into this at the end of the season. They're struggling, and that happens as well. Is it just too much on the legs for them? And so maybe next season he looks good again. He'd be fresh. And maybe if it was a different setup, he would look all right. But good. Let me ask you that as sort of the leading kind of last questions on this in terms of your takes on it.
Yeah.
If you took this team, let's say it's Ten Hag, or let's say it's someone like De Zerbi who comes in, or let's say it's someone like Graham Potter who comes in as manager. What positions, and we want it to be a possession team that maintains control. What positions, you've set out the back, in specific, what positions would you say are the biggest needs for you, that you would say that's where we need improvement, where we don't have anybody that could actually do the job there?
Yeah. A partner for Kobbie Mainoo is needed, because I'm not sure that, again, we're going back to Casemiro. Casemiro is like a big conundrum right now, because he's still extremely expensive. I'm sure his wages are through the roof, and everybody says, oh, send him to Saudi Arabia. It's not like, we're not sending parcels off. It's not a straightforward thing. A partner for Kobbie Mainoo, so he's amazing, and he has saved United probably about 85 million, and he's probably saved a negotiation in Barcelona with Frankie de Jong. And he is a player who can evade pressure, take the ball, control it, get it from defense, run with it forward for 20, 30 yards, feed Fernandes in. So a partner for him. I would really like to imagine a place where Martinez comes back and is fit again for 45 games or 60 games. But I remember reading an article in ESPN saying he never played the amount of minutes that he did until last season. Last season was the most amount of minutes he played, which is also quite worrying. If you want to go forward and persist with Martinez and Maguire, then you have two defenders who play out from the back, but you're probably going to need another one anyway, because Varane is probably going.
Yeah.
And then I started to get worried, because I remember hearing, I think, Gareth Southgate quote and saying that Luke Shaw can't play a game every 3 days anymore.
Yeah, probably true.
Which goes to show. So then you go, well, maybe we need a fullback as well. A fullback, a central midfielder, and possibly another winger.
I want to ask you about that, because I know there's a lot of debate in this question. My view has been, between Rashford, Garnacho, and Højlund, they don't have enough different United. Jadon Sancho ideally would have provided something different when they signed him.
Still a United player, by the way. Still a United player.
So maybe, right? But he would have, and Dortmund are in the Champions League semifinal. We'll see where things go with Sancho and all of that. But ideally, when you watch how he played at Dortmund, and even in some flashes at United, but not consistently, the idea was to provide something different, which is more possession-based it's not about racing by your defenders and beating them for pace every time and getting into the box, but playing through the lines in a little more freedom, maybe more like, I don't know. I'm not sure this is a good comparison. It's probably not, so I won't say it. Never mind there. I was going to say, like, in some ways how Phil Foden floats around a bit for City.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
I think Sancho
he's
would have.
not a winger that is going to run at his man and take him on.
I'm not saying he's as good, and all of
No,
that.
of
I'm
course.
saying
I
the
hear what you're
idea
saying.
is someone different. And I think Anthony could have been that too, but was also not good enough because he's different. Anthony is a different style of player to Garnacho and Rashford.
Last season, it felt as though statistically it was Rashford, Fernandez, and then the wingers kept changing. Sancho couldn't keep the place. Anthony couldn't keep the place. So I think they had like 15, 20 games each in the end.
Yeah.
I think Garnacho had some in that place as well. But it feels like Garnacho has nailed down the left wing role. Left or right?
Yeah, right. Mostly right. Mostly he's been on the right. Yeah, since December.
He's much better since he's been on the right.
Yeah. My concern, of course, is it's only 3 players, and ideally you're going to want something as good when you make a sub or a change or rotation.
Yeah.
And somebody who potentially brings something different as well. Fullback is definitely a conundrum because Luke Shaw technically is probably one of the best possession fullbacks you could ask for. He's carrying the ball through the midfield, overlaps. The things he can do are amazing. He's so good at them. He's so smooth.
Yeah.
He has such a good touch and control of the ball.
He just has never been fit recently.
But not being able to play more than 40% of your games, 50%, it's such a challenge because it's going to be really, really hard to get a better fullback than Shaw. Easy to get one who's more available, but not easy to get one who's better.
Not as good as somebody as well who's been at the club as long as he has. And then you start to think as well, okay, who have been the strikers the last few seasons? And you go, Weghorst, Cavani, Igalo. You go, well, hold on, those were all loans. All
short-term deals and loans,
because the point, I don't think even Højlund was supposed to play as many games as he has this season. So, but then how do you approach a player to say you're going to play for Man United, but you're not going to play all the time?
Yeah,
it's not. And then you fashion in I don't know how much money, and maybe you can come in on this. I don't know how much money there is going to be to spend in the summer for Man United. How close is it with FFP and everything?
I think they'll be able to spend a bit. Big help is Varane and Martial's wages leaving, 2 of the biggest earners at the club. A lot of money going there. The investment from Jim Ratcliffe raising the limit on what can be spent is a huge factor. They definitely have to shift, Casemiro, in terms of buying midfielders. Casemiro, a huge factor there. Whether his wages and money stay on the books or not is a big factor in how much they're going to spend in the midfield. Huge. Center back, obviously, if they were to sell or keep Harry Maguire, makes a big difference there. They're going to get 1 minimum.
I would lean on
2. But I know, right? And that's a big debate because I look at it. I think Harry Maguire's been one of our better players this season by far.
Yeah.
He's obviously a professional. Lissandro hasn't been fit all year.
Yeah.
You sell Harry Maguire, you have a zero reliable center backs at the club, and most teams want 4 or 5, and you have 0. That is for me a big risk. I would bring in a center back. I'll bring in 2 and keep Maguire ideally.
I think he wanted a center back in the summer. I think he was. I don't know how, because I'm not good with transfer rumors. I don't know how good the links were to Kim Min-jae, but
there was some there. There were other names, Todibo, that were realistic as well. That would have been good ones. But, either way, with Varane leaving, Lissandro's health, Lindelof is probably going to stay 1 more year. Evans, we're not supposed to play as much as he did, but obviously he can't take it. The injuries started to pile up for him too. But really building from the back, and I think that would help. I think that would help a lot in a shift to it. I think in terms of this possession, for the most part, I would look at at center back to make sure you have three good possession-based options. A fullback, because unless Shaw is going to be healthy, you got to have somebody who can play similarly to him, ideally left-footed too, right? And then that midfield partner for Casemiro. Now,
Absolutely.
one more question I want to ask you. Last thing on this.
I hope I have a good answer.
A lot of the managers we've been linked to, maybe this matters and it doesn't. A lot of the managers we've been linked to, a lot of the up-and-coming managers in football, for whatever reason, play three at the back now. They play possession style with the three. I think people used to funnily think three at the back was like a defensive style. And then over time they realized, wait, it's not quite a defensive style.
What teams are also doing now is dropping a midfielder into the three.
Right.
So anyway, okay, well, one midfielder goes up and one goes into the three. So you build up with the back three. And City do this as well. They spread it as wide as possible. When you watch City, they have a centre back here, centre back here, and a centre back here, and it spreads it across the whole pitch.
Yes,
which stretches it out.
Do you think that it matters much anymore? Like, oh, that's a 3-back manager, that's a 4-back manager. Do you think it matters that much anymore in terms of difference, in terms of players?
Not specifically in terms of I play with a back 4 or a back 3. It matters more what style the manager is playing and what style the manager wants to bring in, and how open to change he is depending on who he's got, who he can get, because the market fluctuates. And clubs, I think, go in the summer going, we want this guy, and this guy, but then they go, oh, somebody else has got him, and you need to pivot. And because I think that's one thing people don't get about the transfer market is how tumultuous it is. So to me, it doesn't matter if a manager likes a back 3 or a back 4. It matters more, how's he going to play? Does he have a base to work off of in the team that he's going to be? And does he have an approach where he's willing to change that? Because that's what football is now. You need to constantly innovate and constantly change and react to what's going on the pitch. And Ten Hag was strangely a manager who was doing that last season. It is more a case now of seeing whether, or if, because we don't know yet, seeing whether Ineos, because they do appear to be very big on style. So whoever they get in the summer is obviously going to be done with a lot of due diligence and a lot of research. It depends now on who they get and how it's built from there, if that makes sense. I'd be more concerned with who, say if a manager comes in the summer, I would then go back and watch 10 games of his and be more concerned of what the style is and how that's going to fit in. Does that make sense?
Yep. I guess then looking at it in sort of a summary of it, would you think it's correct essentially to say, to some regards, it's a little bit of a blank slate at United at the moment, because it's not ideal. It's sort of a plus and a minus. There's no ideal setup you could look at and say that's the best way 100% to play. But that kind of means you could go almost any direction at this point in time.
Yeah.
The most important thing is probably to settle on something, right?
If they want to rip it up again. Do they want to rip it up again? I think this is one of the things that might save him, because he's known the players for 2 years and they're still with him. So
yeah. Well, and that's of course the question is that do they want to? Do they have options that are better?
Yeah. The manager market is dire right now. This is not a good manager market. Yeah. 5 of the top jobs in the world are available, and I couldn't tell you the automatic picks for them. So
yeah, I know, and so there's a lot of questions to be answered. But I do know that one thing that is 100% going to be decided, and is the case moving forward, the manager is going to have to play the way the club wants them to play. Yeah. That is a fact going ahead, and that is what is necessary. But that also means the way we recruit will align for once with the way we want to play, and we can be sure of that. And so whether Ten Hag stays or goes, if he stays and it goes great, excellent. If he stays and he fails, we're still going to be building on the same team moving forward. And I think that is a positive too. If we get a new manager and they fail, then it's the next manager is going to build on the same thing they were building and not be going the other direction. So either way, positive, but I think we'll start I think we will very much start to get more indications on all of that and the direction that things are going, moving ahead. But I think you can be pretty sure based on what's happened so far, the type of direction they want to go from a style perspective and all of that, because they're certainly hiring with some pretty clear markers laid down on the type of football, the type of experience that they want, and all of that. If those are the people making the decisions, which I think they are. So I'm looking forward to it. I'd be really happy next season to see a bit of calm, a bit of composure, a bit of control.
In football matches, as opposed to this mad stuff that we see.
It would be nice. It would be. I don't like the stress every single game.
Yeah,
and I think that would help then to really identify the personnel challenges more clearly if it was set up in a very consistent and predictable, controlled way. It'd be very easy then to say, oh, that's where it's breaking down. That player's just not able to do it.
Yeah.
As opposed to now where it's just like blame gets thrown around on whoever misses a shot, misses a pass, loses a ball, and it's sort of chaotic. And I think it's a tough environment to judge anybody on, frankly.
I agree. Fully agree.
So, all right, good. Well, yeah, interesting times ahead. And I think maybe once we get, maybe at the end of the season, once we get a little bit more, it'd be a good time to touch base again and say, this looks like where we're going. What does that mean? If we get a decision on a manager publicly, then it'd be really interested. It'd be really interesting to discuss that, to review. To I'm sure you'll do some good threads and breakdowns, and we could go over them and say, oh yeah, this is how they play. This is what they're likely to bring to Man United, if that is the case at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. If we even get a manager, but
if there's a change, exactly. But if they start to define on the types of players they want to bring in and all of that too, I think that'll make some things clear for going forward as well.
The picture will get clearer as we go towards the end of the season, and I think all anybody's doing now is waiting for that to happen.
Pretty much. All right, good. Well, yeah. Thanks for talking again today, and make sure to, if you're watching, when you watch this, to follow Dharnish on Twitter as well, or X, whatever it may be, for the good breakdowns and threads and all of that go there. It's like I've said before, it's easy to understand for anybody, which is always that's the point, really a positive, that it's like anybody can look at what he says in posts and pictures and diagrams and say, oh, I see what's happening. And I like not using technical terms too often.
Me too. And that's going to continue. That's going to continue.
Good. All right. Well, anything else you'd like to say today, or we'll wrap it up there?
No, I think we'll leave it there. And we haven't really got into the specifics much because we just see the same stuff again and again. But the picture will get clearer in a few months.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.